beat drums the dock to life. Workers dancing in the edge of strife.
I'm Fred McMurray, and this is Cargo Chronicles. I'm with Eric Trout, Senior Vice President of Harbor Freight Transport, with our guest today, Tim Roberts, founder of the DockTime app, which aims to, I guess you'd say, eradicate, was the phrase eradicate truck detention. I always want to say something else like they're in. That sounds like truck prison.
Yeah, it does. It does, especially, we think of it eliminate truck detention. Eradicate sounds even scarier, which I kind of like. We might have to shift to a different E word. We're really coming for it with a vengeance.
Yeah, I would say if you're an over-the-road trucker who experiences long detention times, eradicate would be the word.
Yeah.
They might be using some other phrases, right?
Yeah, not safe for this podcast, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a very touchy subject, right? Which is why we want to discuss it and address it, right?
So first, for our watchers, listeners who are not in the cargo industry, what is truck detention?
Yeah, so detention is, essentially it's when a truck sits at a warehouse, shipper receiver facility for a certain amount of time. Usually it's, over 2 hours. That starts the detention clock, and then they're in detention and they're supposed to get paid for that time. So it's really, detention is the waiting time where the driver hasn't been loaded or is waiting to get unloaded. And so it's that kind of extra time where they're missing out on revenue, they're missing out on time at home. Huge problem in the industry.
So Eric, truck detention, how's Harbor Freight Transport see truck detention?
Well, we've got our own drivers. Harbor's running probably about 95 of our own drivers. Over 100 with the drivers in Savannah. And, it's a touchy subject because time is money, right? That's the old adage. And, at Harbor Freight, we've got excellent working relationships with the ocean terminals here in Newark, New Jersey and Staten Island. So we're a known entity going in and out of those terminals. And a lot of the cargo that we pick up, it's the out of gauge flat racks or break bulk cargo. So the terminals are, that type of cargo is kind of off to the side versus the regular ocean container cargo. But we do a lot of regular ocean container cargo. And so our drivers are able to get that specialized equipment pretty efficiently, right? I mean, the ocean terminals, they don't want that equipment on their dock, because these are big pieces of machinery that are not in an enclosed container, so susceptible to damage. So we don't see too much issue with that. Ports, all the ocean terminals in the New Jersey and Savannah markets, they're run very efficiently. So we have not had a lot of driver detention inside the terminals. We do allow for 2 free hours. So it's the time that the driver checks into the ocean terminal. So they in-gate and then out-gate. So they get 2 free hours. If they dwell inside the terminal beyond that, then that's when our detention clock would start, and it's billed in 15-minute increments. Going into ocean terminals is a little bit different than going into a warehouse facility. We also do what I'll call door deliveries, right, where we'll do a delivery to a warehouse or to a place of business, that's not an ocean terminal. And, that's really where the unknown is, because we're not frequently hitting those areas, right? And, the DockTime app is from what I know about it,
Don't go there yet. We haven't gone there yet.
Okay.
We're talking about truck detention.
Okay. It's you would like to know the delivering parameters before your driver goes in there, whether it's an appointment, delivery. You'll have to have a delivery appointment scheduled. You may have to have a confirmation number. Amazon fulfillment centers are notorious for long lines and driver wait times and very stringent. Drivers actually have to have a barcode appointment sheet to go in and get confirmed. So it's a touchy subject because trucks, you make money when the wheels are moving. When they're not turning, and we as a company, we really don't want to charge it. We'd rather efficiently get in and out, because it's an opportunity lost or a potential opportunity lost when that driver gets hung up. But at the same point in time, you have to sit there and you look at the charges and you say, well, $95 an hour billed in 15-minute increments. It's really not covering the cost of that equipment and that driver. So we try to avoid it as much as possible, for sure.
Okay. So Tim, I keep hearing you when you say truck detention, I don't know, I have this image of them all in a room and somebody throwing erasers at them when they say something, which I know that's not what it is. But you founded DockTime to help with truck detention.
Yeah.
Tell us first what made you start it, or first tell our listeners what DockTime is.
Yeah, so DockTime is a platform to eliminate truck detention, and it's gathering all the stakeholders, the facilities, the shippers, the brokers, the carriers into one platform. We kind of view it as a coordination problem between all those stakeholders, and so getting them all together and having solutions for each of them to help eliminate it, that's what we're doing. And we found out about this. We both come from backgrounds in trucking. My co-founder and my great-grandfather started in trucking in the 1930s. So I don't know what the detention situation was like back then, but today it's a huge problem. And when we found out about it, or when we were kind of doing this research phase to start this company, we went out to Iowa 80, the world's largest truck stop, and talked to drivers. And we kind of had an initial idea, like AI freight brokerage, that wasn't super, we were like, all right, this could make some money, but we weren't passionate about the mission. And we talked to drivers and they didn't care about it at all. So we were like, okay, well, what do you guys care about? And detention was kind of like the biggest theme that we heard over and over. Like, hey, I hate being detained. I hate going into these grocery warehouses. I want to just drive. I don't want to be held there for 8 hours. And so that kind of like, all right, that was the light bulb moment. We continue to do a ton of research. Since then we've been to a lot of facilities, talked to hundreds, maybe thousands of people, drivers, warehouse operators, anyone in the industry that's willing to talk. And everyone kind of agrees that detention sucks. And, whether it's the shipper, everyone knows that it's a bad problem. And so that's our goal, is to eliminate it. And as Eric was saying, he'd rather not experience it in the first place. So, we're identifying, we're trying to be proactive about it, identify those bad facilities, figure out how we can help them, and, clean things up and eliminate it.
So when did you start DockTime?
It was around a year ago. My co-founder and I left our jobs. We went out on the road, did some research, officially kind of went full time, I guess, in July. But yeah, so it's been 8-9 months of going at it, and we live together. Our office is our apartment, is our living room. It's all one spot. So we're fully committed. It's been a fun ride. We're not sick of each other yet. It's been great.
Okay. So you told us why you started it. You told us what you're trying to accomplish.
Mhm.
You couldn't find anything more fun, like to build an app for, like, dating, something like that.
I think trucking's fun.
Kind of truck dating for maybe, I don't know. We'll see about that. All right. So what's the root cause of detention?
Yeah, I mean, we view it as really a coordination issue. So, there's appointments being set sometimes, driver is told be there at 8 a.m. A broker actually sets a 10 a.m. appointment. So they're kind of, lying to the driver saying, hey, you got to show up 2 hours early. And so then that driver gets mad. He's there for only an hour after his actual appointment time, but he's there for 3 hours. And so there's all this kind of confusion around it. And typically these warehouses, especially these grocery ones, are just overloaded. There's, we've been to them, there's trucks, surrounding the place out on the road. And it's like, all right, I get why you can't get all these guys in and out on time, but like why was that even the case? Why were they all scheduled to come in at the same time? And so there's really just this piece of like not everyone has the same information going into it. And so that's what we want to provide, like an informational database, getting all stakeholders on the same page. And so that when this truck shows up for a 7 a.m. appointment, everyone at the facility knows, oh yeah, this truck is here. It's supposed to be here. This load is ready to go. Boom, it's on the truck and it's out. And we think, 2 hours is the standard free time. A lot of facilities can do it in 30 minutes. We think there's no reason, 2 hours is plenty long enough. Ideally, it'd be lower than that. But if we can get everyone down to 2 hours, that'd be a win for us.
Eric, your comments?
Yeah. I agree with everything Tim said. There's a lot of other factors that go into it, right? Physical characteristics of the load, right, is one. For instance, if you're delivering to if the commodity is retail apparel, right, that product comes in on ocean containers. You may have 2,000 cartons, and they're all hand stacked inside that container, right? And so to get loaded or to get unloaded, right, you have physical labor that has to touch 2,000 plus cartons, right? So that's a time and processing issue. But a lot of those receivers are what are called drop and hook, right? They would rather have a drop trailer delivery, which, depending upon your trucking company that you're driving for, how big you are, can you drop your trailer there and then go get another dispatch and an empty trailer? Yes or no, right? It just really depends on the trucking company. But the majority of the trucking companies in the United States are what we'll call small to medium truckers, right? So it's the 50 or below trucks, right? And they don't have the resources with a 3-to-1 trailer ratio, three trailers to one truck where they can swap out and do that. So that's a time factor. Grocery warehouses have been historically known not to utilize. It's what I'll call temp labor. They're what the industry refers to the people that offload grocery trucks as lumpers, right? And if you're a driver going into a grocery warehouse, and I've done this in the past, when I owned my own trucking company, I've actually made those deliveries. You just don't know who the hell to talk to, right?
Yeah.
You arrive at the warehouse and you go see the dock foreman, or you check in for your appointment, and they're like, "Well, that's great. Have you arranged a lumper service to come unload your truck?" And the driver just doesn't have that information. They don't have that carnal knowledge, right, at the boots on the ground level to know, oh, I should have gone ahead and scheduled this lumper service before the driver even showed up, right? So the drivers put at a real disadvantage at that point in time, where they've got to then search, or hunt around for, who's the right contact party to get this labor scheduled to offload my truck. All of that factors into potential delay, right? Yeah, the driver could have been there at 8 o'clock per their delivery appointment, but unfortunately, by the time he or she hunts down the proper person, or what the parameters are, they could already be within 2 hours of detention, right? There's just really no good cut and dry, or there's no standard practice for it,
Mhm.
right, in the industry.
Yeah.
And again, freight characteristics, what the cargo is, and just the type of delivery it is can really, it's a factor that you have to account for. That's why I think Tim's with his platform is really on to something, right? I think, when we initially talked, you said it was like the Yelp,
Yeah.
right? Pages for,
Yeah.
My line.
s- sorry to steal your thunder, Fred. So, um,
Mine.
but it's information and knowledge is great, for these truckers to be able to go in and have some you know, agnostic
Yeah.
party who says, "Hey, tell us what it takes to get cargo unloaded efficiently at this facility," and put
Yeah.
it out there.
All right. Before I go into the Yelp part of this, what all does DockTime do?
So we have sort of three products. So, I'll save the Yelp one for last and I'll let you tee that one up. But the first one is kind of what we started with is Dock Clock. So that is helping carriers collect detention automatically. And there's a ton of reasons why, a carrier will, there's 30 trucks for one dispatcher and there's a lot of other things that they have to do. So collecting detention is just a small part of it, but it can make the difference on a load between profitable and you lose money on it. And so we have this automated tool that instead of the dispatcher going into the Raycon and looking up, oh, whose email who do I send this email to, or what time do I have to send it to? We do that automatically on their behalf. So, we set a trigger like 30 minutes before detention starts. Boom, we send off an email to the customer and say, hey, detention's about to start. Just so you know, here's the policy. Here's where the truck is, and then when the appointment finishes, send the same thing. Here's the evidence. All right, that the truck was here. This is the location logs. This is a picture if you need to see a picture. And so that's kind of the first product that we had. And then the second one is this Yelp for ship and receiver facilities that I'll let you ask tee up the question maybe, but that's really to provide information to those truck drivers beforehand. And the last one is Dock Tools, which is really to help facilities that struggle with detention. So will identify a facility that is maybe even if they're good or bad, they need some process for checking in drivers, for scheduling appointments, for dock scheduling, trying to clean things up for them so that the driver goes in and out and there's no delay, there's no detention. So coming at it from kind of all three angles, from the driver, from the carrier, from the facility perspective.
Okay, so this is what I would call a suite of apps,
Mhm.
and one's for the shippers, one's for facilities, one's for the
Yeah.
drivers. So the driver app has been described as kind of Yelp for drivers.
Mhm.
No trademark, copyright
Yeah, exactly.
inferred. So tell us about that. That's some ways Yelp has gotten a bad name in past, which I'm sure you're not going to do that. But what data can a driver see from uh, the Yelp version?
Yeah, yeah. It can be a little bit controversial. Hopefully, in a few years, we can just say we're just doc pages. We're not the Yelp for anything. We're
There you go.
us. We have our own name, and it's all positive. But it's essentially it's really tactical stuff, like down to like super low level, like hey driver, take this exit instead of that one to get onto the correct road, and like we've seen drivers pull into the wrong side of the facility and then they have to back up and they hold up traffic. We were watching one of the US Foods. They held up traffic for like 15 minutes trying to back up onto this busy road. So super like kind of like detailed stuff like that, but then also some more, like are there amenities? Are there bathrooms? Is there overnight parking? Which guard shack do I go to? What paperwork do I need? And then also, collecting like how long am I going to wait there? Because then they can kind of factor that into their next load and figure out, okay, and even before they book this load, they can figure out, is it worth it to actually do this? Because I'm going to wait there for 6 hours and they're not going to pay attention. I don't actually want to do this load, or I want to charge a higher rate. So giving them everything they need to know before going to new facilities so that the experience is as seamless as possible and they're in and out, the way we want them to be in, under 2 hours, ideally, 30 minutes.
So do drivers get to like leave reviews and like 4 stars, 1 star, something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very much driver driven for lack of a better word. We want to crowdsource this info. Drivers love to talk, and sometimes that's complaining, sometimes that's complimenting the good facilities, but we think they're a super powerful source of data, and they have all this tribal knowledge about a facility that can then help the next driver that's going in if it's a new facility for them, and then vice versa. It's a great platform for drivers to collaborate with each other and have sort of a centralized repository where you go to a new facility, let me check the doc page for it and see what other drivers are saying. But also we're bringing in the shippers to claim their pages, and they can provide check-in instructions. They can provide, other details about it. This is the check-in link. This is the paperwork you need to have. So kind of corroborating all what drivers are saying, but, having the shipper or receiver actually, provide that as well.
Yeah. I'd have to say, just going on to that, right? One of the things you said, drivers, they do just want to drive, but
Yeah.
they're also, at the end of the day, they're professionals, right? This
Yeah.
is this is their bread and butter. And you get the drivers who are super proactive, right? And I think your suite of programs would be very useful to drivers who are very proactive, right?
Yeah.
I've had drivers, both sides of the spectrum. They'll listen to what you tell them, and then that's fine. I've
Yeah.
had other drivers who are just unbelievably professional, and they'll go out and they'll research and they'll contact the receiver. Hey, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I got this appointment, that my broker said it was confirmed, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure it's
Yeah.
confirmed. And,
Yeah.
these are the instructions I was given, and in the old days, Fred, before, web pages and things like that, it was not uncommon for receiving parties basically just to have, here's a voicemail, here are the directions, to the facility as part of the voicemail.
Yeah.
And that was it, and the truckers were left to their own, skills to be able to figure out,
Yeah.
okay, I got to get there, and now what do I do, right? So
Yeah.
this is by crowdsourcing that information into one platform, I think is really a leap forward for, if you're a driver advocate, which I am, so I think it's
Yeah.
very helpful. And you'll get drivers who are the proactive, because again, time is money, and when those wheels aren't turning, they're not making money. So they
Yeah.
want to get in, get offloaded, get the next load, and
Yeah.
keep on trucking.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I think sorry, I'm hung up on the Yelp. Um, I remember the first time I got introduced to it by a client or two. There was a client I remember having, and he had some Yelp reviews that, as far as we could tell at that point in time, were not legit.
Yeah.
And, and so there's this, how do you get rid of them? And
Mhm.
at that point in time, there were a lot of folks, a lot of businesses would run away if you said the word Yelp. So my
Yeah.
question is that, um, given that I've seen that mentality before, how are the facilities? Because these facilities are basically getting publicly rated by drivers.
Yeah.
How are they accepting of that? Are they wanting the support of that? Or are they, "Arr"?
No, it's a good point, and we want to we're kind of we're shaming some of the bad ones, but we also want to highlight the good ones. There are good ones out there. We do a Facility Friday post every week where we highlight a good facility that gets drivers in and out in time. And so I think there is an appetite, and at the end of the day, like it is an inefficiency for them as well. Like if drivers hate going there, they should want to know about that because that leads to bad interactions. It leads to, damaged goods potentially. There's a lot that can go into it. And so at least providing some data, and maybe it's not, it's a little bit subjective, obviously, but providing some data to them and saying, hey, relative to other facilities in the area, drivers hate going to you, and there's a reason why. And here's the top 5 complaints, and we can go to them and say, hey, that this is a solvable problem. You might want to invest a little bit more time, but this is something that other facilities are doing well. And so I think it's a differentiator for the good facilities where they can they can be highlighted by us, and then the ones that drivers hate going into, there's clearly something wrong there, and there's things they can clean up, and that's what we're excited to kind of find those ones and get drivers in and out.
All right. So you it sounds like not sounds like you referenced, we'll say, the good ones
Hmm.
and the bad ones.
Yeah.
So what has been, I guess, either a surprise? So let's do it this way. What's been something surprising that you've learned about how detention facilities operate? And what's a one or two gotchas that people should avoid or drivers should avoid when dealing with detention facilities?
Yeah, I mean, the good, everyone kind of when we were starting this is like, hey, every cold storage facility is bad. They're going to use you as temporary storage. Your trailer is just going to be sitting there, and the load of 40,000 pounds of frozen peas is just going to be is waiting there until they have room for it in their facility. And so kind of we targeted those, and we were like, all right, let's look at some of these and confirm. And we actually found that there's a lot of them out there that are actually pretty good. And so there's clearly a way to do it well, which is good news. There's models out there where you don't have to use this use this trailer for temporary storage. You can get drivers in and out. So it's definitely exciting to see that people are doing it well. It's just, you need to care a little bit more and care about these drivers that are humans. They want to, beyond the revenue part, they want to get home in time, and they lose their hours of service, and then they can't get home, and they miss out on valuable family time. So it's been somewhat surprising is to see that there are these good cold storage facilities. And then, I guess on the bad side, the grocery distribution centers are typically ones to look out for. And they can't be avoided necessarily, but what we want to do is empower drivers and carriers. If you're going to go in there, you should charge X amount more because you're going to be sitting there. And it's a lot more palatable to be in detention if you're earning another $500, and you're not missing out on the next load or missing out on a revenue opportunity. So that's what we're excited about, is providing them, lifting them up and providing them enough data to properly price out these loads. So if they are going to go in the bad ones, they'll be able to make up for it by getting this, kind of upfront. And then those bad ones will start to feel it because they'll be paying more in freight rates, they'll be paying higher line haul, and then hopefully they'll come to us and ask, what we can do about it.
Eric, your thoughts?
It's being having been in this industry for 28 years, I've seen a thing or two. And, as you were talking there, Tim, it I've actually run into a couple local warehouses that will actually, I don't want to say poach, or it's a business opportunity for
Yeah.
them, right? So they're local to that facility. They know that that place is an absolute horrible receiving experience for the trucker,
Yeah.
and they'll actually go out and tell trucks, hey, listen, I know you're sitting there 6, 7 hours. Deliver the load to me, and I'll deliver it for you on your behalf, right? And just do like a
Yeah.
local shuttle move.
Yeah.
And when you look at the economics of it, you're like, my God, man, it's going to cost me extra $375 to do that. But if you lose your driver all day waiting to
Yeah.
get unloaded, that's a load that they potentially would have missed, as a pickup, a revenue generating load.
Exactly.
So that 375 seems like a really good bargain, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
You know, um, so I do think it is good, like it, having that crowdsource feedback. I was looking at our Google reviews, for Harbor Freight Transport, and we don't have a great review from truckers, and I understand that. Um, Part of or I'd say the main driving issue with that is just the number or the nature of the cargo that we ship or it's out of gauge and project type cargo, and
Yeah.
you have things like cranes go down, or hours of service for a crane operator, right? You've
Yeah.
got things like that that have to be considered. So I know that Harbor, at our headquarters, 301 Craneway, we don't have a great rating. We're actively trying to improve that by putting on, like, quote unquote hot doors, right? Where we can look and see what that general type of cargo is that the driver is there to load. All right. Is it an easier load? Put them over in a hot door. Get them
Yeah.
out. That's one less
Yeah.
thing that we do. So
Right.
we've put programs in place where we know drivers are going to get held up. We've heard the complaining, and it's feedback, right? Complaining, accolades, you name it, it's just feedback. And when you look at feedback, feedback is just data, and data is only good when you action against it, right? And so we've taken a proactive role in doing that, setting up, for instance, on major projects that we have, because a lot of our project of our cargo is project driven, where it'll be like 65 containers of X product that come in, and it's got a shelf life or a project timeline. So we'll slot specific times, with the warehouse crew for that, right? We've also altered our labor patterns, knowing that congestion and detention was an issue. So we focus primarily on first shift of loading outbound drivers. Second shift, night shift comes in. They're focused mostly on stripping or unloading the new cargo that came in, right? So there's that feedback and the data points. It's only good if you action items against it.
Yeah.
And so, and when this subject came up, it's near and dear to our heart, because of our headquarters and the nature of our business. Now, if you go to one of our other warehouses, Savannah or Kearney, New Jersey, which are more traditional four-wall facilities, and it's palletized cargo, we don't have driver detention. Drivers are in and out.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the nature of the beast. But it is good information, and I love the crowdsourcing approach. If we do a great job, hey, everybody likes to get a pat on the back. But if you stub your toe and you hold somebody up, yeah, you're going to hear about it. But there's also reasons behind it that are out of our control at some points in time. But
Yeah, for sure.
you just don't want to be a habitual bad offender. So we've
Yeah.
taken action against that and changed the way that our operation has been. How we historically operated, we've now changed that, and we've seen great benefits from it.
Okay. So, Tim, in the time you've been out in the industry working with drivers and stuff like that, what's the weirdest cargo you've seen in detention?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we've talked to, there's obviously like the reefer side, there was a guy who was delivering something.
Wait, time out.
Oh
You said the reefer side. I'm in California.
man.
That word.
It's also April 20th as we're recording.
Yeah.
So since it is 420 and you did say reefer California, we're not talking about, you're talking about refrigerated trucks, right?
Yes,
Correct.
refrigerated trucks. That's a good call out. We've gotten used to it. We're such industry vets now that we're using all the acronyms and the abbreviations and nicknames. But yeah, reefer refrigerated truckloads where those are typically the ones that are held in detention. But we've seen some, we followed some guys around. There was a guy delivering something huge for a data center, and the facility was not ready for him, and he couldn't even pull into the facility. So we had to go to a truck stop, and we were just sitting with him chatting at the truck stop, and he couldn't even go in and like do anything. He just had to wait there and wait on the call. He was 2 miles down the
Yeah.
road. And so he was just sitting there, kind of just twiddling his thumbs, doing nothing until they were ready for him. So that was an interesting one, and not a typical case actually compared to what we've seen on the reefer side. But those loads, those specialty loads, can be tricky.
Eric, what about you? What's the weirdest you've been doing this for a long time, so I'm there's got to be something there that bounces
Uh,
here.
um, Raw cowhides, wet raw cowhides. Yeah,
Oof.
from from a slaughterhouse during the summer.
That's
Yeah,
not something you want sitting out in the heat.
no, it's not something you want sitting out in the heat. And once it is sitting out in the heat, guess who doesn't want to unload it?
Yeah.
Everybody on the dock, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, I had a driver young in my career, and he sat for basically 3 days, right? He got in on Thursday night. They wouldn't offload him. Supposed to offload him on a Friday. Sat there all day Friday. 95-degree plus weather. They wouldn't unload him. End of the shift, nobody wanted to do it, and
Oof.
driver sat there all weekend till Monday. They had to bring a special crew in, so that
Wow.
was one that, and it was so bad that once we finally got that load delivered, if that's what you want to call it,
The truck.
we couldn't use that trailer anymore. It
Wow.
was we actually just parked it out in the middle of the field and never used it because we tried to power wash it 4 or 5 times. It just would not get
Wow.
clean to be acceptable for use of any other load. So
Wow. I think you got me
yeah,
beat
that
there.
that was a big money loser, right? That was
Yeah.
not only loss of the driver's pay, productivity, but we lost an asset, right, in
Yeah.
terms of the trailer for it. So,
Wow.
but that was a brutal one.
You think dropping a load off at a slaughterhouse in the middle of summer? Try working there.
Yeah,
I spent
yeah.
years
Well,
in one. I opened it by putting the first couple of head of cattle down. You'd open
Wow.
the door of your car and it would hit you like a wall.
Oh.
Of course,
yeah.
chicken plants did that 10 miles away. So we're not going to go into meat store because the
Yeah.
smell's coming back to me. Very, very bad. So if I'm a carrier or driver,
Hmm.
is it only carriers that can get involved or can individual drivers get involved?
No, yeah, drivers as well. We want drivers, it's a free platform for drivers, and it always
Yeah.
will be. We want them to be able to look up this info for free. They can use this data however they want. If they want to go into a new facility and then look it up before they get there, awesome. If they go into a facility and it was a terrible time, they leave a review afterwards. That's great as well. So it's free for drivers to use. And then from the carrier perspective, we think there are kind of like three main value props where when they sign up, they get driver retention. Just having drivers' voices heard is a huge thing. Like, if they're submitting it somewhere else, like Google reviews, it's kind of just out in the ether. No one's going to see it again. If it's on dock pages, their dispatch team, their operations manager, whoever, they're going to see it and hopefully take action. So driver retention when turnover is a huge problem in the industry is the first one. B is sort of like sales and pricing power. So if you know a facility is bad, you're consistently going, you're a carrier, you're going to this Wakefern distribution, and your drivers are complaining. It's given 1 stars every time, and they're spending 6 hours there every time. You can go renegotiate that contract the next time it's up and say, hey, if I'm going to go in this facility, run this lane again, I need an extra $500 or whatever it is, per load. So sales power, and then the last one is I'm blanking on the last one. Oh yeah, I guess just like planning. So having dispatchers can use it as well. They can help drivers plan. If I'm going to this facility, okay, I'll tell the driver, here's the paperwork you need, here's everything you need to have in ahead of time, and here's where you check in. And then how to like actually, how to get in and out on time, how to using other driver tips to plan better and know, all right, if I do this, I'm going to get in and out in time, and I'm going to get to the next load, and I'm not going to miss that. So those are sort of the three value props for carriers, and And it's just a great data tool for them to be able to see where their drivers are spending time.
So how would a driver go sign up?
Yeah, right now it's free. You go to DockTimeApp.com, and there's a big button highlighted in white. Sign up, and if you're a driver, you just need a phone number, and that's it. And then you can go. You can look up your first facility. If you want to go, leave a review at one you recently went to. You just search the address, and then boom, leave a review. See what other drivers have said. See if they agree. So it's super simple for drivers to sign up, and carriers that want to sign up. There's a demo button on there as well. Just feel free to, it'll go to me or Connor. We'll get back to you probably within 30 minutes, and we're excited to have you on.
Eric, before I ask my last question, you got any thoughts?
No, I think I think the most benefit that I see for it is at the individual driver level, right? Dispatchers, companies, I'm not sure how much usage, right, a dispatcher or a pricing manager might have or interact with that. But if every driver in the fleet comes back and says, "Man, this place is horrible, absolutely horrible to deliver to," that's the feedback that they'll get to, right?
Yeah.
And when you quantify it, right, through crowdsourcing data, that's power, right? And so when the drivers are saying, "Hey, listen, I'm not going there,"
Yeah.
eventually that'll boil up to the pricing manager, and the pricing manager will be like, "Well, why won't anybody take this?" Right? And that's boots on the ground. Here you go. Here's the reviews, and this is why. So I think it's a great platform and collecting that data.
Excellent. Tim, what's something that we haven't touched on that you think is important for our listeners, watchers to know?
Ooh, putting me on the spot. Yeah, I mean, I think, one thing we have this driver ambassador program. We want to highlight these drivers. There's a lot of great drivers out there. We want them on the platform using it, referring other drivers. So yeah, if you're a driver out there and want to get involved, this is a great way to do it. We'll pay you for reviews and referrals, and sort of get that crowdsourcing going. And then you can win, there's weekly contests as well. And, we're excited to add, badges. If you leave the first review at a facility, you get, a nice badge, like, first reviewer. And we're hoping that, that titillates some of the drivers to, kind of competition. I love earning badges. I love earning status for those sorts of things. So, yeah, we'd love to have more driver ambassadors, and, churning that engine, and being the voice for other drivers, because we know that, people care more about what's behind them in the trailer than what, those drivers are actually going through. So we're really for those drivers, and we're excited about what we're doing for them.
Wow, gamification for drivers. Pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, Eric, you got any Harbor Freight Transport news that no one knows yet? You're
Um,
on the road, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in the beautiful city of New Orleans. Great food scene, right? But I'm not here to eat. I'm here for the Journal of Commerce break bulk convention. So it's kicks off at 5 p.m. this evening and will run through Wednesday. So looking forward to meeting with a lot of peers, a lot of potential customers, and other service providers.
So you'll know what my question is when I see you this Friday about break bulk.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Who can I get on the show next? Right.
This is what I've been able to accomplish in less than a year, just in his brain. All right.
For Fred, maybe if you had some badges or something like that, one for every guest I bring on, or
Yeah.
micro rewards.
Well, given that you've crossed, or you and I and Steve have crossed 10,000 views in less than a view in a year, I think we can probably come up with some little badges and awards. Ooh, a good time now. Stop. All right. How do people get a hold of you?
Go to our website, DockTimeApp.com, or find us on LinkedIn, DockTime, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We're everywhere. Feel free to call the number. That's my personal cell phone, which maybe I should take off the internet at some point. But for now, we'll take any call we can get, and we're excited to hear from some drivers, from carriers. Yeah, just call that number or shoot us an email, info@docktimeapp.com.
Excellent. Eric, since you said you're at Breakbulk, how do people get a hold of you if at Breakbulk to sit down and talk with you?
You can reach me on my mobile number, or reach me via my email. Mobile's 804-687-9732. Or just reach out via email, schedule some time. I'm here to work, so it's not like I'm just going to be sitting around watching everything as it goes by, right? So I'm not going to be actively working and learning, right? This is a great convention to learn about new and exciting issues or items coming up in the break bulk and heavy project cargo world. So looking forward to it.
Hopefully you get some time on Bourbon Street.
Well, of course.
I'll be diligently working in my hotel room.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, he will. All right, folks. So this has been another episode of Cargo Chronicles. We're happy to have had Tim Roberts, founder of DockTime app, and our recurring victim. Co-host guest Eric Trout. Catch him at Breakbulk next week, and profitable trucking or shipping for you, folks. See you again soon.